Okay, welcome to our Getting Ready to Work series brought to you by Arkansas Rehabilitation Services and your Region 4 Pre-ETS counselors. Today, our subject will be there we go. Getting Ready for Work, Part 13, How, Who, and When to Ask for a Letter of Recommendation. This is brought to you by the Arkansas Rehabilitation Services, your Region 4 Pre-ETS counselors. We're preparing a job-ready, career-bound workforce to meet the needs of Arkansas employers. And our objectives today will be: explain the importance of having a letter of recommendation in an employment portfolio. 2. Name 3 sources needed for letters of recommendation. And 3. Develop and maintain proper etiquette when asking for that letter of recommendation. And below are our Arkansas CTE frameworks that include career and college readiness and career development. Also, we include college readiness practice for our teachers to include in their lesson plan. What is a letter of recommendation? Well, here is the definition: a letter describing a person's qualities and abilities written by someone who is familiar with that person's character, work ethic, and skills in order to communicate those attributes to a potential employer. And there's our corgi winking at you saying you're awesome. Is asking for a letter of recommendation scary? The answer: you bet. It is very scary to ask somebody, but you got to know how to ask, when to ask, and how to get the best letter of recommendation possible. It's not that scary, just knowing that you're asking for somebody for help. And remember, asking for help will always be your greatest strength. Who do I ask for write a letter of recommendation? Well, what people do you write? Well, you only need 3 people. No more than 3. And those 3 people must include these people. You need a professional reference. That's someone you have worked for. Someone knows your work and how you assist in the work environment. It could be a former boss, supervisor, a volunteer supervisor, or maybe somebody that did paid work experiences that you worked under. Academic reference, that is an educational reference. That's somebody that knows your school skills that include math, reading, even your academic effort, your school effort. Did you try hard in school? And also your behavior. This could be a teacher you have, it could be a high school counselor, or it could be your principal. They all can be academic / school references. Then you got a personal reference. This is a person, most importantly, not a family member, that can vouch for your character, how you get along with others, and your maturity. Now, this can be a coach, family friend, neighbor, mentor, your preacher, but it cannot be anyone you're related to. That's including that cousin of yours. Has to be somebody that is not related to you that can vouch for your personal characteristics. And there is a putty cat begging you for a letter of recommendation. Okay, right here we have Mrs. Lauren Berger. She is the queen of interns. I would really recommend you guys check out her YouTube channel, subscribe to her YouTube channel. She has a lot of hints. She's a very bright young lady, and she also has a book. It's all good.
She said, call me the intern. Welcome back to the Intern Queen YouTube channel, and in true Intern Queen fashion, we're going to talk about letters of recommendation today. I don't think we've done a video on that yet, so it's really important that you guys always arm yourself with letters of recommendation, because you never know when someone's going to say, hey, I need a letter. I need a letter of reference. I need a letter of recommendation about you in order to hire you. So you want to make sure that you always have them on hand, just in case an internship coordinator or an employer asks you. So my advice is to have 3 letters of recommendation available at all times. So you want to have an academic letter, so something from a professor that's been written within the past year or two. You want to have a letter, you want to have a character reference, so something that's written by maybe a family friend, someone who you've known for a long time, not your mom or your dad, but again, I think a family friend that works in a prestigious field. Maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a lawyer, maybe they're in marketing, maybe they work at the tourism bureau, whatever it might be. Get that character reference, someone that can speak to your integrity, your character, your loyalty, your work ethic. And then of course you want that professional letter of recommendation from a former boss, a former internship coordinator, someone that's worked with you on a really professional level. If you guys play any sports, I think coaches of sports teams are great people to write you letters of recommendation. If you're a part of any clubs on campus, a PR club, a marketing club, an ad club, a debate club, the chapter advisors, those are great people that can write you letters of recommendation. And I think it's important that all of your letters of recommendation have been written within the past 2 years. That way it's always something relatively current. Just in terms of good practice, whenever you finish a school semester, ask one professor whose class you did well in, where you had, a good repertoire with the professor. Ask that professor to write you a letter of recommendation, and that way you always have something current that's on hand. So again, 3 letters of recommendation: an academic letter, a character reference, and a professional letter. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Now, when you leave a job or an internship, how do you get that letter of recommendation? Because it's always on your mind, but you never know how to ask for it. 2 weeks before the end of your internship, and you should all be able to pick out that date right now, okay? 2 weeks before the end of your internship, that is when you go to your immediate supervisor and you say, I know the internship is ending in 2 weeks. I know you're really busy. Executives love it when you address how busy they are, right? They have a lot going on. I know you're really busy. My internship ends in 2 weeks, and I would love to get a letter of recommendation from you. Would that be okay? They're gonna say yes, you guys, or they're gonna say, you know what, let me follow up, Whatever it might be, just tell them that you're ready to do anything you can to help. And then I would say to follow up about 1 week later. So now you're at 1 week until the end of your internship. You're gonna follow up and say, I just wanted to ask about that letter of recommendation. I'd really love to get it before the end of the internship. Okay? So you're gonna ask 2 weeks before the end of that internship for those letters of recommendation. Now, let's say that you keep asking and you're just getting nothing back, and your boss is just zipping around and so busy, and you're like, uh-oh, I might not get that letter. Here's where you take the advice. I write about this in All Work, No Pay, my book. There's my book. Okay? But you take my advice of writing your own letter. Now, what I mean by this isn't being sneaky and forging your boss's signature. We're not doing that here. But what I think you can do is you can say, I know you're really busy. Do you want me to put together a template? Then you could look over it, make any changes that you want, and just sign off on it. Would that be okay? And most likely, if you have a really busy boss, they're actually going to really appreciate that you're offering to do this. So in this template letter, it just needs to be, I would say, 2 to 3 paragraphs max. I think 2 paragraphs is just fine. And you just want to speak to the actual work that you did at the internship. When people are reading letters of reference, they want to clearly understand, what did you do for that company, and why were you a great intern and someone that person wants to recommend for future hiring. So in your template letter of recommendation, you're going to talk about the tasks that you did as an intern, and And I would be specific. I would name off a few specific tasks that you were responsible for. Write the reasons why you're so great, and I know that you know what those are. You know, you were punctual, you came on time, even the things that you didn't know, you were happy to learn, you always were cooperative, you got along with the team, okay? Put these things in that letter and give it to your boss or your supervisor. And more than likely, they'll print it out on company letterhead, maybe they'll make a few changes, correct some spelling, and they're gonna sign off on that. So getting that letter of recommendation is very important. A lot of jobs require it. And again, sometimes you don't know which employers are gonna ask for a letter of recommendation. And if an employer calls you and says, hey, I have your job application in front of me, I need a letter of recommendation and I need it tomorrow, you don't wanna freak out, right? You wanna already have those letters on hand because you are a prepared job candidate because you watch the Intern Queen on YouTube. All right, now go get those letters of recommendation and good luck wrapping up that internship.
Okay, that's Lauren Berger. Very good advice. Remember the two things she said about the link, about the time of a letter of recommendation is really relevant, and also writing your own letter of recommendation for a boss. We'll get to that later, but right now we're going to do 9 rules for requesting letters of recommendation. Okay. Remember, number 9 is the most important, but we're going to start with number 1. And rule number 1, like anything else, you need to plan ahead. If you're going to ask a teacher or a boss, think about the ones you get along well with. Don't ask a teacher that you have broke the discipline slip record with. Ask the ones you get along well with. The ones you like, the ones you get along well with. Not the ones you don't get along well with. Make sure you ask for a letter during the times when they're not busy, like before spring break, summer break, Thanksgiving break. And if you're going to ask a former boss, again, ask when they're not busy. Give your letter writers plenty of time to complete this. You might want to ask a couple of months in advance. Rule number 2, ask nicely. Remember, a recommendation letter is not part of anybody's job. If someone agrees to write you a letter of recommendation, they are doing it out of the goodness of their heart. You should be grateful for them to do this to you, and take this in consideration when you ask them. This is a favor to you. Do not send a 2-sentence demanding email stating that you want a letter and you want it now. Whenever possible, talk to the person or meet with them personally. Or if you can't meet with them and they're too far away, write a friendly letter on how they influenced you. Rule number 3, ask what kind of letter you may get. Some people write just generic letters of recommendation. This might not be the type of letter you need, and might not be a letter that your future employer wants to look at. Make sure you find somebody that has your best interest in mind, and that letter of recommendation is a personal one that attests to you personally, individually. Rule number 4, be professional. As in everything you do, be professional. When you're corresponding with the person you're writing this recommendation letter, don't be sloppy. Remember, this person is evaluating you for a future college or a future job, and they will probably draw on the most recent experiences they had with you. They can remember with you. Thus, you need to make sure that your interactions with them are positive while they're writing your letter, or when you ask for the letter, be kind, well-mannered, have good manners when you ask them. Rule number 5, include relevant details. When you're asking for a letter, you should be sure to bring up memories that you had with your boss or teacher and help them jog their memory and remember you as a student or a employee. Bring up specific individual experiences that you had with them and that you enjoyed from them, or something they have taught you. It might be something they have forgotten. You should give your references all the logistical information that is you, so that they will need to write this letter. You can include your grade point average, your Employee of the Month award, your class rank, your transcript, and most importantly, you need to tell them when you need this letter. You want your letter writer to leave the conversation feeling like they have more than enough information on hand to write you a great letter of recommendation. Rule number 6, follow up. After your reference agrees to write you a letter of recommendation, don't leave it just there. Be sure to send them an email or more informal form of communication thanking them again for agreeing to write this letter. Contact them periodically before the letter to make sure they hadn't forgotten you in writing this letter. You can remind them about the application's due date and see if the letter is in progress and ease some of your anxiety that you might be feeling right now. Remember, like Lauren said, you ask them 1 week before, 2 weeks before, and then 1 week before the deadline to make sure your letter is coming through. But ask in plenty of time. Rule number 7, make it easy. Remember what Lauren said. You can't just ask someone to write a recommendation letter and give them nothing to work with. You have to give them something like your resume, or show them something about the background of you, your skills, your abilities, what you've been up to nowadays. You might have had 2 jobs or been to another school since you last seen this teacher. Your reference will be willing to write a better recommendation letter if the letter is easier and includes your information you wish to convey. You might want a reference sheet to give that letter, things that you want the letter to say to that letter writer. You could even write your own letter. You can write your own letter and ask that recommendation writer to review it, and if it sounds okay for them, they sign it. That's perfectly ethical and legal because they reviewed it. Rule number 8, we're getting to the end. Rule number 8, send a reminder to them. Nobody's perfect. Even if a person agrees to write that letter, gives you assurance that it will happen on time, they might forget it as time passes, or they may not submit the letter by the deadline. But it's up to you to tell the person that you asked for the letter and make sure they hadn't forgotten you. You got to remind them. Nobody else, not them, it's you. You don't have to check too often. In fact, like I said before, check 2 weeks before the deadline and 1 week before the deadline. But if you repeatedly bug them about they might not write you a good letter, and that just annoys them. Wait a few weeks at a time before sending a quick email and check on the progress. Don't make a long email for them. Just a few sentences will be fine. Few polite sentences. And number 9 is their most important rule. Remember this. Say thank you. Once your reference has written your recommendation letter, it's so important to thank them for the extra time and effort they did to help you. A simple email is not enough. Many people give little gift cards to their reference letters thanking them for doing this because this is something personal they did for you. A card to show their appreciation. Send them homemade cookies. Something they can sincerely thanks them for their time and effort. Remember, these letters are only good for 2 to 3 years, and then you will need another letter of reference. So you might be visiting that reference writer in the future to ask for another letter. So be sure to say thank you. Okay, some things to consider about letter of recommendations. They're only useful to prospective employers for 2 to 3 years. Keep on friendly terms with your references, like I said before. Make sure your references keep your employment goal statement in your resume in mind when writing the letter. That's why it might be a good idea to give them the resume so they have a tool to write your recommendation letter. Number 3, make the recommendation letter easy for your reference to write, even if it includes that you write the letter yourself and let them review and sign it. It's proper to provide references with your current resume, your pocket resume, or a quick reference sheet to show for the reference to use. Now, Lauren Berger has asked that you think about writing 3 short paragraphs for a letter of recommendation about yourself to make it easier on your reference letter writer. Things to consider. What are the things you did well for this reference? You might want to mention that. What are your skills that your reference can attest? What are your job-specific skills? That means skills related to that job. What's your transferable skills? Skills that can go to any job. And what are your good worker skills? What are the skills that make you a good worker? Your personal traits, which we will get down to here. Your character traits that make you a valuable human. What kind of character traits make you a valuable human employee to any work environment? Talk about that. Are you punctual? Are you friendly? Are you positive? And of course, this ends our series. Thank you for attending. This is Arkansas Rehabilitation Services, your Region 4 Pre-EDS counselors. On behalf of Kyle Kuiper and Dana Byron, this is Byron Laster, not Gabby Hayes, wishing you a good day and see you for our next series.